So we're here to talk about laser scanners and accident reconstruction and crime scene investigation. That's who I am, Bobby Jones. I'm with the Knoxville County Sheriff's Department. Did I tell you that earlier? Did I tell you how smart I am? And how many things, great things I've done? If I didn't, I'll tell you that later. But I'm not going to bore you with that at the moment. But I did have an interesting number that I came up with. I was wondering, before I came out to this conference, and not because of this conference, but I was wondering, how many times have I set this scanner up? What is that number? How many times have I actually pressed the button and created a file that I could use in some kind of reconstruction? Now, I got my hands on a Faro scanner in January, the end of January 2013. From that date until today, I've hit the button 1,405 times. I wanted to touch myself lovingly, a hug. I don't know where y'all are going with that, but I was really impressed with that, not because that it's a big number and it should be impressive. I was impressed with that because it's so damn much fun. I, as a chief, like using it. I like doing the work. It's made police work fun again. It's made going out at 3 a.m. in the morning, okay, so not so much 3 a.m., but it's made when I'm there fun again. It's given me another opportunity to capture and think about cases a different way, because I'm now, instead of, we all go through, I'm sorry, I run an old processor in my brain, so every now and then I have to reboot. How many of you use total stations currently? How many of you use scanners? How many of you that use scanners came from total stations? All of you just brand new scanner people? Y'all are lucky, holy smokes. You guys that use total stations, you know what I'm talking about. You go through the phase where you have to learn how to use the equipment first. Then you go through the phase where it sits in the office, you don't get the call out. Then you get the call out and you forgot how to use the equipment, because the training you had on it was a few months ago, and you wear many hats at your department, as we all do. We're busy. And so you have to relearn it again. While you're relearning, boys and girls, you are not focusing on the critical part of the investigation, that is collecting the evidence, or collecting the right evidence. And that's why scanners are so important for us, because they allow us now to think about other aspects of collecting evidence. They're going to collect in spite of us. I will warn you that this slideshow does have some graphic content. If you have a weak stomach, I would like you to get up and take this opportunity to wait outside, because I don't want you throwing up on people in here. I can deal with most anything except fresh. Yeah, so let's not go any further. That said, a few short years ago, laser scanning was so expensive, it was out of reach to most people. That's why there's not a whole lot of scanners out there on the market. So we talk about scanners that were costing initially $500,000. Trying to get them into the forensic market, they came down to $250,000. Too much money. People didn't even want to think about even applying for grants to get this stuff, but a few did. Prices now have dropped. Popularity is increasing. We are now at the police level in a position with the software advancements that have been made thanks to CAD Zone. They've made it possible for us to really use scanner data, point cloud data, in such a way that we can truly analyze not only a crime scene and bullet trajectory, but automobile crashes, momentum, yaws, airbornes, like we've never analyzed them before. So as we get more users involved in laser scanners, more people get into them, We see more people, more scanners on the market. They become more familiar and they become more desirable. The more desirable means more purchases, which means the prices eventually will continue to become more and more reasonable, even more so than they are today. But first, with anything, there are legal issues that we have to discuss and talk about. With any new technology, there's always fear. There is uncertainty. And there is doubt. How many of you have heard those three words put together? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That is a typical underhanded way of creating a wall between you and what people don't want you to see. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. How many of you have testified in court? The defense attorneys, and they're not all bad. Okay, so they're all bad. The defense attorneys talk about the things you didn't do. No matter how good of a job you did, you didn't do it good enough. Would you agree? So they instill into the jury this fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And now we're introducing laser scanners, and they're not even used to total stations yet. They're still developing a series of good forensic questions for total stations, and now we're going into laser scanners, and they're panicked. And by panicked, I mean they're raising the wall between the court system and our tools, what we want them to see. So questions about any evidence that's scientific or technical in nature, such that the layperson or juror would not have common knowledge or understanding, that is taken right out of the rules of court. This is particularly true with new or unfamiliar technology. We have to gain the trust and kind of give you a little history looking back on technology and how that it went into court cases. Manual calculations versus calculators, oh God, they're of the devil. Satan's spawn in that calculator. I don't know, I'm looking around here at faces and all of you look very young. I don't see very many faces in here that have that I'm 105. I know I look 28. I'm hot, but I can't help that. Don't hold that against me. You guys that are testifying now, that are coming new into this, you don't have to deal with this calculator issue. I was not allowed to use a calculator on the witness stand to talk about the minimum speed from skid marks. On the witness stand, I had to do simple math all on a blackboard or some kind of white flip chart. Somehow we had to get that, write it out, every little step, square roots. How many of you do a square root by your hand? By hand. I can't anymore, I don't think, but I could. There was a time I was really good at it because I had to do it all the time on a blackboard. And trig functions, more crazy equations. And you were not allowed to use a trig chart in court. This all had to be calculated out by hand. Now, simple tape measures were even questioned at that time. You know, there's laws on the books now at the federal level that says that a basic tape measure, as long as it is of the normal size and standard tape measure that we would buy off the shelf at Sears or Kmart or Home Depot or Lowe's, that is acceptable. It is accurate within the degree of accuracy needed to perform the job. I look back, and even today, I wonder how in the world that we got by with all of these different arguments and how we're going to get by in the future with this new technology, these fancy, scary laser scanners, and how did it collect the data and how do we know that it's right? Well, we're going to have to develop accepted procedures, accepted protocols, successful tests that we conduct on our own, and we're going to have to rely upon studies that we all contribute to. And of course, proper usage, which means that you're going to have to follow all of these previous steps to get there. In some cases, such as the calculator or the tape measure, the court can take judicial notice to say that any matter that is not subject to reasonable dispute, because it is generally known within the trial court's territorial jurisdiction, or it can be accurately and readily determined from sources whose accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned. That comes right out of the federal rules of evidence. Eventually, scanners will be here. But for now, we've got a little ways to go. The judge in every case is the gatekeeper. It is his job to keep the garbage from getting into the face of the jury. Part of his job is to review the evidence and the testimony from all experts or any expert before it's heard by the jury. How many of you have testified before and the judge has sent the jury out while they ask you questions? So that opportunity is for the judge and the defense to argue that you're not correct for whatever reason, or your information is not correct. So the goal the judge has is to determine the probative value of the scientific evidence versus the prejudicial effect. So probative versus prejudicial. Is this going to be helpful to aid the jury in understanding what happened? Or is it so prejudicial that when the jury sees it, they will make up their mind and they will not consider any other reasonable evidence? That's a hard job. It's a very hard job, and often we get angry because judges say, well, I'm not going to allow that evidence in. They do that for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's political, as ugly as that may be, and we will never know that truly. Other times, they have some logic behind the way they think. The evaluation of an expert opinion and scientific evidence is based upon one of two criteria, sometimes both, depending on the state that you live in and the jurisdiction in which you work. Everyone is different. Remember, there's two. One is Fry, and this is the test of the science. Fry will be applied to that scanner. And Fry is the name of a case that is documented where I think that came from, I don't remember where Fry came from, Daubert, which is going to be next, you'll see that in a second, came from a pharmaceutical argument. So Fry is the challenge of the test and the admissibility of the scientific evidence. So how do we know that that laser scanner, that magic box, works? How do we know it's accurate? That's what they're going to be questioning about that. And how do we know that this virtual world that we see in this software is realistic? How do we know these things? And that's the Fry test. And you have to be prepared to answer the questions. Next comes your test, boys and girls. And this often is the one that is won over more than Fry, is the Daubert test. The Daubert test came from the pharmaceutical lawsuit, and you can look these up on your own, just Google them, and you'll see dozens of references. This is the test of the expert. So this is the challenge of admissibility of the expert witness based upon either their lack of training, lack of understanding, or lack of knowledge of the particular subject matter at hand. So the question may come up to you when you get a scanner, how does it work? You need to answer that. And you need to be able to answer that and have foundation behind that answer. And the same with your own knowledge. How do you know that it works, and how do you know how to operate it? And that comes from training, just like anything else we get, guys. We're going to have a certificate that says, yeah, this guy went through the training and is a certified operator, or whatever that terminology might be. Laser scanning is appropriate for both crash and crime, and it really doesn't matter which that you're using it for. If you need a snapshot in time that is forensically accurate, laser scanning is the way to go. The techniques differ between crashes and crime scenes. And when we talk about crime scenes, and this is not exact, but it's close. Most of our crime scenes happen in a more confined area, a smaller area. Every now and then we have a shooting that goes across town and our crime scene becomes very large, but realistically the crime itself occurs generally in a smaller area than, say, a crash. So for example, in this particular case, this gentleman, he went out of his mind. Police officers were called to the residence for a welfare check. A knock on the door, he opens the door with gun in hand. So he was greeted with return fire. He never fired, but he did have the gun in his hand pointed at the door. And when he was instructed to drop the gun, he did not, so the officers fired and killed him. While we know the story, a scanner in this case, as opposed to a total station, would have been ideal because it would have captured all kinds of information inside and out that we could have used to show bullet trajectories and show officers' positioning. Now, not only can we use this to help us reconstruct the crime, we can use it in training to help us avoid future incidents. So ultimately, when we talk about scanning and we talk about what's to come, we're talking about new science. It's really not new, but it's new to us. Our application of this science to take somebody's freedom away, whether that be through prosecution or maybe using it to defend someone. Likely as we move forward, we're going to see more challenges to this. Because it's in its infancy right now, there's not this long list of good questions yet, but that's to come. So we talk about crime scenes being smaller areas. Generally, crime scenes are controlled access. By controlled access, I mean that someone is generally at the door or at the perimeter to keep unauthorized individuals from entering and exiting. And those people that do enter and exit are usually logged. Generally, a crime scene is a static environment, generally. Unless, of course, it happens outside and weather is turbulent. Generally, in crime scenes, we need a couple of different viewpoints. We need a top-down view, a diagram showing the layout. And we often need a 3D view. And this is what the scanner can do for us. Not only can it capture all this data, but it can give us viewpoints and the ability to make basic diagrams. Again, using the CAD Zone software, really super easy. Before that, all we had was 3D that had to be shown on some higher upper end computer. Today, we can get this crime scene from a laser scan on a piece of paper. And that makes it very, very valuable. So we talk about crash scenes. Crash scenes are typically much larger. Why? That's correct. Thank you very much. Because cars are generally moving faster. They cover more territory, more ground. They leave longer strains of evidence, either pre-crash or post-crash. Crash scenes are unique because generally we don't control the crash scenes quite the way we do a crime scene. Would you agree? You might try to lock it down, but generally it's very difficult. We have vehicular traffic, we have pedestrians, we have dynamic surroundings, people constantly moving around, including our own personnel. This is a typical crash scene. And look what's happening in the background. You guys in the back, can you see what's happening? We got people moving through that crash scene. Now that is a crime scene. It is the same as if someone took a bullet and put it in somebody else's head. The difference is the gun's a little bit bigger. But we got people walking through it as if it's an accident. By the time we will get set up and begin to shoot this with a total station, this dynamic scene will have changed so much, potentially to even get some of the evidence excluded, especially if we have pictures taken to show that evidence was moved around. Scanning at crash scenes is in its infancy, and because of the rapid pace that a crash scene changes, it's so important for us to adapt methods now that work and that are going to be fluid for the future. Efficiency is the key for preserving evidence. Reliability, that's established through tests, through methodologies that we even currently use with total stations, accuracy confirmation shots, those types of things. So standards, checks, and balances. Those are things that we have to employ. Generalized protocol will help you with these procedures. Now, when we talk about serious crashes and fatalities, that's about the only time we get our total stations out. But with this scanner, it's going to be different for you. With scanners, guys, you can use these on less important crashes and practice a lot easier than you ever could with a total station. Because this literally is out of the box on the tripod, set it up and hit a couple of buttons. You are rocking and rolling. You don't have to go through a whole lot of setup. Your setup can be really super simple. Super, super simple. And I think in the future, you're even going to see it more simple than it is now. Capturing data for all types of crashes should be considered. If you have a scanner, it should be working, and you should consider getting it out on all types of crashes just for your own experience. It's easy, quick, and simple, and most of all, it's reliable. All the data you collect out of this thing is going to be reliable. So your practice, of course, will in turn make you efficient. This is one of the things we don't do with total stations because they are sometimes a little difficult to remember. The setup process, that type of thing. So when do you start scanning? If you have a scanner and you get on a crash scene, when do you start scanning? Well, as soon as possible after you arrive. And why? It's because this evidence is dynamic. It's changing. It's moving about even while you're getting out of your car. The evolution of the scene and evidence demands that you begin collecting data as soon as possible. One of the things that you would see me do if you were at one of my crime or crash scenes, as soon as I get out, I've got a phone or a camera in my hand and I'm taking pictures. If you're on my scene, I'm taking pictures of you. Hey, Richard, how you doing? I'm going to click that. You might not like it, but I'm taking your picture. I'm taking pictures of everything around me, and as soon as I get out of my car now, not only am I taking pictures, but I'm getting that scanner out of the box and I'm turning it on. Waste no time getting set up. This is where we all make mistakes. You want to get started as soon as possible, and while targets are important, and by targets, guys, they're, for those of you who may not have used a scanner, we're using either spheres or checkerboards, depending on your environment, to help us have a way to stitch these scans together. However, that's not so terribly important with the dynamics of the crash scene. Getting started is critical. If you do not get started, you will never finish. And that is guaranteed. Don't overthink it. Too much planning leads to data loss, and this is what I always say at the sheriff's office. If you want to mess my day up, schedule a meeting. That's all you have to do, schedule a meeting, because when you go in the meeting, first you're going to go in and sit down with people you probably either don't like or disagree with, or maybe you do like them, but you're still going to disagree with them because maybe you're just an old cantankerous jerk like I am. So I don't like meetings. I don't like all of this over planning. I kind of like getting out there and getting it done. I know meetings are important, but if you stand around your crime scene or your crash scene and decide, oh, we need to go over here, and somebody argues, no, we need to go over there, that's as far as your meeting needs to go. From that point, make a decision and do it. Get started, and you will be amazed at the data that you will collect. Of course, safety is your #1 priority at the scene. Most importantly, it's the #1 priority for the equipment. We can replace you, but it's going to be hard to buy more equipment. That's the way my sheriff's office looks at us. We are expendable. That's not true. That's not true. You want to set up in a safe location. You want to use cones. You want to use your vest, anything you can to identify where your working area is. And if you are working with a scanner, you are the person that needs to be working with it, not 38 more people. Those people need to get somewhere. They either need to get control traffic, control pedestrians, protect evidence. They need to get the hell out of my way. I appreciate them being there, but I don't want them around my scanner. That is not an area that they're allowed to be in. The small size of this scanner makes it vulnerable to people walking over the top of it. If you turn around and look at those little tiny legs on that scanner, the little tiny legs on that at night, what do you think they look like in the dark? Can't see them. They're gone. They're invisible. And you will walk right the hell over the top of them, even you knowing they're there. So make your work area visible, and when that scanner is working, leave it alone. Stay away from it. Keep people clear of it. So that's the safety part. You always want to make sure that you're aware of where the scanner is pointing, and with the right training you'll be able to do that. And we call this the Pharaoh dance. That you're dancing with the unit. You're moving out of its way constantly. And this is the same with any of the scanners. You're going to have to stay out of their sight, because if you're between them and what it wants to see, it will see you. And while you may like to see you, the evidence doesn't get captured. So you stay out of the way and make sure other people do as well. We scan crash scenes with live traffic. We don't care about the traffic. We'll capture the data. The scanner will help you. And we like moving our traffic through at a reasonable speed. We don't like them creeping through. The slower they go, the more data you lose. But the faster you get them going through there, the scanner will only capture a few outlines, and generally you will get everything you need. So immediately upon my arrival, or your arrival, you would turn the scanner on, locate a safe position, set the scanner up, set up a tripod, and mount the scanner, create a scan file, and this is the beauty of this scanner. You really could just hit the button and go. You could reset your sensors and things like that if you have an opportunity or time to, but if it's critical, get it set up and hit the button. It will do the rest for you. We can work through the other stuff on the back end, like naming. We can fix that. You don't have to spend all day trying to figure out what to name your file. Now, while we recommend that you give your file some information, such as a location and a time, if you don't have time to do that, get to scanning. We'll worry about the other stuff later. The sensors, I don't worry about the sensors. I don't have time to play with them most of the time. I get out, I give it a file name, I rock and roll. I go. I don't care if it's jacked up 500 feet in the air. It doesn't matter to me, because in the CAD Zone software, I'll be able to jump right in it, drop that right down to level ground if I need to. But most importantly, I start working with the data. Untouched, unedited, I start working with the data. Collecting it, scanning it is the most important part. And if you never get to hitting that button, you will not scan. Stay busy and focused. Be prepared to move the scanner to the next location when it's ready to do so. Be aware of the scanner's progress. This means that while you're doing other things, you're still going to be paying attention to what your scanner's doing, where it's at, who's around it, those kinds of things, but you want to avoid downtime. I will tell you that single position scanning is becoming very popular with us. Very popular. However, if we have time, we scan more. Often we will only scan once, because time will only permit us to do it one time. The scanner should always be working when you're on scene. You should never have that scanner set up and idle in the back of this room. If we were on a crime scene right now, I would assign one of you guys to watch that and to make sure that it's spinning, it's working while we're in this room. That means moving it, moving it and hitting the button, move and hit the button. The accuracy and the application. These scanners boast a distance accuracy in most cases, well, point to point actually, I think actually is 2 millimeters. Now, is that realistic in most cases? And the answer is probably, yeah, in a single position scan. It's when you start stitching them together, that's where you have some errors that can occur. But we have ways to check and cross-check that to make sure that these errors are minimized. And you have to keep in mind that the methodology that we're using right now with the scanner versus what we used to use in the old days is so much different. For example, pacing. I'm going to charge you with speeding. So I got a skid mark, and this is what I do. I walk. And I write that number down, and I was successfully prosecuting people for speeding based upon a pace. How accurate is my pace? It depends on how much I had to drink the night before. It depends on how that I feel. So that pace could be very different, but it was accurate enough. Wheels? Any of you engineers in here? How many engineers? Surveyors?
Mechanical.
Mechanical? Okay. Well, surveyors when we go through survey school, we learn that wheels have an accuracy of plus or minus about 1 foot. That's what's printed and documented. But for us, it's not necessarily true. The accuracy of the wheels is much smaller because we're rolling on asphalt generally. Surveyors go over hill and dale with these wheels, and that's why they get this cumulative error of 1 foot. So if they measure 500 feet, they've got plus or minus how many feet? Potential.
5 feet.
5 feet. Plus or minus 5 feet. So 495 to 505. For those of y'all still working that math out, I thought it'd help you out. So plus or minus 5 feet with this laser scanner, that's gone. But if we used to be okay with this, why would we not be okay with plus or minus a couple of millimeters? Typical tape measures, total stations. As we progress up the line and we've got more accurate, the accuracy that we capture with this kind of data has been okay forever. The accuracy that you capture with the focus scanner will certainly meet your needs. Crime scenes have much smaller areas to cover and much tighter tolerances. What about bullet trajectories? Can they be affected by a little bit of error? Absolutely. So we'd have to have that type of tolerance, that plus or minus a couple of millimeters that we get with the scanner for bullet trajectories, but not so much outside. We're going to suggest that you use spheres when possible. Use targets when possible, but if you don't have time, don't worry about them. This software, and particularly the new stuff, is going to do a lot of this stuff for you automatically. It's going to figure things out from natural targeting, from other targets in the room, corners and lines, things it already does, but it's going to do them so much better. When you're placing your spheres and your targets, you want to make sure that you put them in controlled areas. These spheres are most of you familiar with the spheres I'm talking about? You guys got any spheres?
No, great.
Okay, well, okay, so, but they're expensive. These spheres are expensive. You'll get 5 of them in a box, and they're very expensive, and you want to take really good care of them. But at a crash scene, I don't have time to babysit the spheres. So, you know what happens to them at a crash scene? They either get hauled off with a crashed vehicle because we got one sticking on the car, or they get left somewhere next to a utility pole, or the tow truck driver or ambulance runs over them. And that will make you cry. When you lose the first one, it really hurts. Then the second and third one, you start to get where you don't care. So it leaves you about 2 left that you never use anymore. Color images. The pictures that this scanner gets can be very useful, but they're not imperative. If you don't have time to do anything but collect data, turn those pictures off and hit your scan button. You will be very pleased with the grayscale data that scanner will give you. With a good set of complementary photographs that you take yourself, you will find that will be adequate. Make sure that you use this picture taking ability. Only when the lighting is adequate and it's practical, you have time. Low light scanning should only use grayscale always, because the pictures just won't come out. They're going to be black. And it's going to give you a message telling you that too. Low light scanning is typically much faster because it avoids that extra 3 to 4 minutes it takes to get all the pictures. The scanner can see very well in low light. The camera cannot. And that's just the bottom line. Show you a nighttime scene. This is a nighttime scene with color. You guys know how to work the lights back there? And just hit the wall or something? Thank you. This is color. Can you see anything? Now, I could tell you that there's a car up here. Can you see it? There's a bicycle right here. Not very clear, is it? CADZone developed this for me because of this particular crash, being able to turn that color off. And it's where we discovered, most importantly, that grayscale scanning may very well be all we have to have. I'm not saying it fits every case, guys. I'm just talking about finding efficient ways to get the maximum data with the least amount of time, particularly when you have a dynamic scene. In this particular case, this bicycle was struck by an SUV. Now, these police cars have nothing to do with it. They're just blocking the lanes. But only until we saw the grayscale, I literally thought that this scan was just going to be thrown out the window. I thought we're going to have to go back and get the total station to measure the paint marks. And that was going to be really embarrassing for me because I'd been beating the drum about this scanner for so long. And once we got the grayscale stuff figured out, it made life so much easier. This is a grayscale image in a completely darkened room. We could not even see our hand in front of our face. The scanner sees very well in the dark. It does not have to have a color picture to go with every single scan. So let's talk about some methods. So what are the purposes of your scan? That's what you have to ask. Line drawings, simple speed analysis, detailed analysis, time and distance, visibility studies. What is the purpose of your scan? That will dictate what you have to do with the scanner. It's not magic. You're going to have to think just a little bit about how you're going to use it. So when evidence is changing, consider the single position scan because it will get your data right now. It's going to take a snapshot of everything it can see from that one position right now. And generally, if you set it in the right spot, you'll get most everything you need. The advantages are quick data collection and you avoid registration errors. And it generally will give you everything that we're going to need for a crash investigation. So when? Multiple positions. When are you going to use multiple positions? It's when evidence can't be properly documented with a single position scan. You're going to have to move. So the techniques might include a rectangle technique, a circle technique, or zigzag, path of travel. Any one of those techniques we might employ to capture data depending on the type of data that we're trying to capture. The more time we have, the more scans we conduct. So your method is always determined by purpose, no matter whether it's a scene, but particularly when it's a vehicle. Whether or not you're going to be modeling, animating, or doing a simple crush analysis. Momentum. In this particular case, a single scan is sufficient. I don't need more than one scan, but in this particular case, I was able to get more. That's why you see these target spheres, those green spheres sitting out there, and they're actually white. Interior. You can set the scanner up very easy in an interior and capture the interior, and you'll get data that you've never seen before, including seatbelt. We might be able to study kinematics, compartment integrity issues, even be able to put drivers and passengers back in the vehicle. We also might scan multiple times to capture the entire car and compare it to an exemplar. This is a Scion. It hit a tree. And this is what it's supposed to look like. Such a direct comparison to talk about damage. And the measurements that we can get from this now in comparison to the undamaged are very accurate, but a lot more accurate than we've ever had before. Evidence is often very small in pedestrian crashes. These scanners can help you pick this stuff up. It can help you identify and document correctly positions of the pedestrians, where they were when they hit, pieces and parts that get knocked off of them, their personal belongings, all of these things. Autopsies. If you have a chance to scan at an autopsy, scan. If your body is important, scan it. Now this means you're going to have to flip it. So you scan both sides, just don't scan one. And scan with clothes on and clothes off, particularly if you've got a pedestrian crash. You'll be amazed at what you will start learning. And you'll also be amazed at the fact that we can now actually measure something on a body with extreme accuracy. And we can make those direct comparisons with this accurate data to the striking vehicle. Remember that when you're scanning, scanning should always be centralized to your primary data on your first scan. That's where you're going to capture the most, hopefully. It may be the only opportunity that you have to capture data. So keep in mind, set up centrally located first and work your way out from there. Diagrams are an integral part of any accident reconstruction. We have to have them to calculate momentum, to calculate trajectories, those types of things. This CZ point cloud software is what we use. It's the primary and only software that I can use for accident reconstruction analysis and really good bullet trajectory analysis. I want to show you just real quick some example cases and I'll be done, guys. What time? What are we doing on time?
About 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 minutes.
All right, thank you. This is a crash where a guy runs off the road and he leaves a couple of yaw marks. And the scanner in this case was so very helpful because we missed data that we were able to go back and get. Now, I'll explain more in a moment, but the car is going to go off at a very high speed and it's going to flip over in here, come to rest upside down, and there's not going to be a driver in it. And the driver will not be found for a very, very long time, like many hours. Like this occurs at 9 o'clock at night. It's about 9 o'clock the next morning before the driver's found. Now, we were all thinking that he had left because the whole area was searched. Of course, it's night and there's woods, but later we found him. And there he is. He's not in such great shape. So this guy was ejected from his vehicle and went through the trees. Now, we didn't realize this at the time that we were documenting the scene, that the trees and where he went through the trees could be seen, not only by us in the pictures, but guess what caught it?
Scanner.
Thank you very much, the scanner. Gold star for him, will you please? The scanner caught these little twigs and branches that were broken. I was able to calculate then from point to point, airborne. And I had reasonably close results, losing a little bit of speed every time he would hit one of the larger objects, all the way to his final rest position. It was reasonable. We would have never had that had it not been for the scanner. Now we saw it in the pictures, which is what said, hey, we got the scan, let's go look in the scan, and sure enough, look at the pictures, zoom in, and there it is. So we're able to get point to point. And we did that very simply, just simply open it up in this CZ point cloud software and tapping these points, we immediately get 3D information, XYZ coordinates, and we calculate all the distance information that we need. Another position of his body, and we scanned his body because we wanted to know exactly what position he was in. It was alleged that maybe he got out and walked there, but we found his boots very close proximity to here, and his socks were clean. So this is how we started figuring out that he indeed went through the trees. He didn't walk down to this position and die. This is from a real crash. There's nothing exaggerated here. All these times were taken from the timestamps on digital photos. There's no edits, no embellishments, and no exaggerations except for the BS that I'm going to follow up with. So, just facts. This is an injury accident, but it's not a fatality. So I'm going to show you how valuable and how powerful a scanner can be for you. At 11:04, arrive on the scene, get started scanning, and while the scanning is taking place, I'm taking photos. I'm constantly aware of where the scanner is. I'm making whatever notes I need to make and taking pictures. I'm documenting while the scanner is working. The scanner is capturing my measurements. I'm capturing other evidence that might not be captured by the scanner or might become relevant later on. So I'm capturing photographs. So I'm not wasting any time. I'm staying busy while the scanner is busy. So this scene is changing every single second. Traffic, emergency personnel, excuse me, whether it be fire truck, ambulance, police. So I got the scanner up and running just as quickly as possible. Now this is the original scan. It's grayscale. Can I get what I need for final rest positions? Sure I can. Absolutely can, because I can see the axles. I can see the axles and I can place a point on those axles. What would we have done with a total station? Yes, I'm sorry?
Shot those 4 points.
You'd have shot the 4 points. But the scanner did it, and it collected so much more. Not only did it collect those points and so much more, but it did it accurately, very accurately. This is what happened at 11:15. What's missing over here? One of the cars is gone. Gone. So this is where it was, and this is where it's not. So in that short a time, one car is gone already. Never, ever to be seen again in that position. At 11:36, the tow truck, second tow truck finally gets there and loads the second vehicle. And this is what the scene looked like when it was over. So where are the cars? Gone. Where's the evidence? Gone forever. Forever. The evidence from this crash is all but non-existence. So with the 3D scan data and the CZ point cloud, we can revisit the crash site anytime the safety and comfort of the vehicle or office, anytime you want to. And this is what we came up with. Got in and traced. We added either Google or Bing under it to help us find the other missing lines that we didn't capture. We had the scan of the actual cars in place. And at 12:15, my drawing was complete and ready to turn in. Now 11:04, kids, to 12:15, 1 hour and 11 minutes total time. What I'm trying to tell you guys is that this is fast and it is real. It's no special training, none whatsoever to do what I did to collect that data. It's pushing a button and it's collected. Yeah, you're going to have to learn how to draw. You're going to have to learn a few things about how to click around in points, but I've got a niece that's 15 years old now, and she loves playing with the scan data, and she gets into CZ Point Cloud and can draw anything I want her to draw with virtually no training. It's just so simple, and that is why these scanners are going to become a way of life for all of us sooner than later. They're accurate, they're reliable, they're efficient, and now, guys, they are affordable. They are within reach. It all depends on whether or not you really want one and you're going to go after it. CAD Zone Point Cloud, this CZ Point Cloud, if you haven't seen it, you absolutely got to get in it and take a peek at it. Unlike the other softwares that are used with scan point cloud data, it's actually simple and something that you can use. The other point cloud softwares on the market, some are good, some are not so good. Scene is a good point cloud data software, but it's a processing software. We need analytical software, and that's what CZ Point Cloud has done for us in this arena. I want to talk to you just real quick about one more or two. This is a two-position scan. This was a high-speed, very dangerous curve with limited sight distance in both directions, and required us to paint, mark, open the road, and come back. The only way to capture the data is to scan it off the roadway. Otherwise, you create an issue and a traffic concern, a traffic hazard. We're going to tie more people up, put them out, plus run the risk of another crash around the curve. So one man, just me and my scanner, me and my scanner. That's a song. You'll hear it later. And two positions. And I did throw out some spheres just so I could stitch it together, but since that time, I rarely use the spheres anymore. So I've captured my data, and this is all I needed. I needed a 2D diagram. I needed to be able to document that information. That's all I needed. And that took just very few minutes. Literally, this was like 3 minutes tops. To trace this out, just click, 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 and that's it. And we got a diagram. I can click print, rock and roll, and it's all to scale.
It gets the paint, no problem.
Yes. Yeah, and even if you're grayscale.
Have you noticed stand out better than others? Or?
Certainly orange seems to work very well on the black contrast, but pretty much any paint, we're using a lot of white now. Just for experimental purposes, but ultimately I typically go back to grayscale, and I'm working with a lighter color, just a contrast. And it works very, very well.
Do you even use the total station anymore?
Total station, what's that?
Do you use it?
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I got 2 robotics sitting that haven't been used since I've had scanners. I've not gotten them out, not one time. Not for anything. I love the scanner so much, I would much rather have to work harder with the scanner than the total station, where sometimes literally, guys, I could set a total station up and bang, 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 I could shoot 6, 8 points on a bumper of a car and I could get crushed. Where I'm going to go with the scanner and hit the button, and 12 minutes later, I will have everything I need. Not only do I have the points, but I got the entire car. I got all I need and more. And give me 30 minutes and I can have maybe 3 positions. So this is a case fatality, centralized location. And I got close in here so I could get in and see. This was kind of an experiment on the front end, but it worked. I could get everything from that one position I needed in this crash. I did 7 positions just because we had time. Dead guy didn't care. So we got plenty of data around it, but from one position. I could even go to the other side from one position and get all I needed. All I needed. And so what we're doing now is we're scanning, trying to do the 1, 2, 3 positions and knock it out, and then we go to the tow yard and scan the vehicles again, and then we can merge them together if we need them. But we typically don't. We're getting everything we need. Downloading on the scene, we're doing this. We're getting the data, we're looking at it before we leave. Even if it's a single position scan, we're trying to see if there's anything else that we possibly are going to need. So we get it downloaded. Interior scans, like I said, we're doing those. We've never done this before. We've never had this kind of data, so it's really, really powerful. Uncontrolled scenes, we're setting up in the middle, trying to capture as much data as we can, and then we're deciding which, if we've got more time, how do we get more scans, and which cars do we choose? Well, this one had medical treatment going on, so I'm not going to choose that one. It's going to be there a few minutes. Would you agree? The other ones up here are light damage. They're going to be gone in just a minute, and you'll see the tow truck backs in while I'm scanning. But I have the data. Most importantly, I have the data. I move down to this one after the medical personnel has extracted, and I scan again. And now with a couple of 3 scans, and even while this one's scanning, they're going to hook up to this. Because it's not a fatality, we can't lock the road down. But I'm still capturing data like I've never captured it before. And all done with the Faro scanner, just a few scans, very limited time, and this is what the crash scene looks like when you're done. All gone. Everything gone and changed forever, except for the snapshots in time. One of the hazards of scanning on scene, puppy dogs, you have to watch them. They'll try to turn your scanner over. They're there for one reason, that's to destroy your data. Accuracy confirmation, guys, this is one of the things we're doing now. We're laying out scales in the scans in random places so that we can say clearly, we've tested it and it works. I can measure these scales in any random place and they always work. I've never, ever, 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 since I've been scanning, had one not work, period. That's the kind of documentation you'll set up in your protocols so that when you go to court, you can say that very thing that I've said. And now I can say it with absolute confidence. 1,405 scans, I've never had one off, ever, period. Getting elevated above your scenes is going to really help you, and elevation can be accomplished with these tall tripods. Guys, I am out of time. I probably went a little bit over and I apologize. Thank you so very much for your time and attention. Should you need to contact me for any reason, this is my information. I do have my own consulting business. That is Bobby@Reconstructionist.com. My telephone number, the most important one for you, would be the 865-755-0612. That is my personal cell phone. It will ring 24/7. If you need me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you call me. I get called often at 3 o'clock in the morning. If my wife answers, just be very kind. Guys, again, thank you so very much. I appreciate your patience with me and your attention. Thank you. Thank you, Richard.